expect it to be. Or we don't get the community that we hope to receive when we come to church. Something is not according to how we think it's supposed to be. There's a dissonance in our mind. There's an emotional expectation that there is not met. All the more for some of us who are here, who are new to this community or to any church that we visit, it feels even more strange that the church who represents Jesus Christ, the epitome of love, doesn't help us feel love. We come into church and we feel like we're a stranger, and at times even feel that we are unwanted. That's why I call today's title of this sermon, The Restoration Project. See, restoring things is very interesting. I have a friend whose hobby or interest is to restore old furniture. So you can see clearly on my right, your left, that part of the wood is how it's aged over the years from spilled milk and tea and soup and I don't know what stuff they spilled on it, and it's corroded away from the humidity of the air and the sun that's shining upon it. But he goes and he works on it and he restores it to what he thinks it's supposed to be like. It looks awesome. I'm not so much into restoring furniture, but my dream one day is to be able to restore muscle cars. That's my personal dream, that one day I have a garage where I can work on a project car to restore it from the one on the right to the one on the left. I have a friend whose dad was restoring this Ford Falcon in Australia. He bought it and he was restoring it. I knew him when I was 20 years old. Last month or the month before, he came to Singapore and said, "James, guess what?" And I won. After 15 years, my dad finally put the gearbox into the car. It can't be driven now. 15 years. But the dad knew that the car has a look that it's supposed to be. There's an initial glory to it that's been lost through the years, and he aims and he strives to bring it back to how it looks. There is an original design that things were supposed to be. And I think deep down in humanity, we know there's an original design in the interaction between us. That this relationship we have with one another is not how it was meant to be. That today we're polite, we're nice, but it's not deep and strong. We're not trusting enough. Even in the church, there isn't that real connection that we in our heart know that there should be. This is the Aztec church before our signboard went up. It was 4 years ago, I think 3.5 years ago. Come to church, how do you feel when you walk into Aztec on Saturday mornings? Are you walking here out of expectation of, I can see people that I like, I can worship God together with them? Or you come to church and says, I'm going to go in, fulfill my duty. After Pastor James usually finish on time at 12 o'clock, I'll get to go. Or maybe this week I might stay for the fellowship lunch, have some food, the food there is awesome, and then I'm going to go. And I wouldn't think about this church for the rest of the week. For 6.5 days, it's out of my mind until the next Saturday morning, the alarm clock sounds, and I'm like, it's my weekly duty I have to fulfill, I have to come back to church again. How do you feel when you come to Aztec? A couple of us went to Batam for a church camp, beginning of September, and we had some wonderful musicians who sang to us while we ate. Those of you who didn't go to church camp, man, you missed that. You should join us for next church camp. And there we had a good time together. There was a good social bonding. And but on top of that, there's one thing we did during church camp that we realized we don't do very often, is that we came together and we split up into groups of 2 and 3s and 4s to pray together. And I went around and said, how was it? Because every session we spent time in small little groups to pray together, pray for one another. I say, how was it? And they say, wow, I've never done this before. And then some people I've never prayed before. And I feel like, there's a bond between us, so that I know that there's a worry this person has, and I can pray for that person. So a church should exist not only for the social interaction. We expect that there will be social interaction, but we also expect more. That there should be a spiritual interaction, accountability between one another. Turn with me to Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. We looked at this verse last week. We're going to continue looking at Genesis. Genesis 1, 27 says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. It is in our initial design for us to expand a group of 3 to become a group of 5. We were designed to be in a community, in an interactive relationship with one another. And the instruction in verse 28 straight after that was to be fruitful and multiply. God is saying, continue the expansion of this community, but do not neglect the quality of this community, which very soon after was attacked and was changed. Turn with me to Genesis 3, verse 6 and verse 7. It says here in 3, 6, and 7, so when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired, and to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together, and made themselves loincloths. You know what happened in chapter 3? It's not just the eating of the fruit, which a lot of people think is apple, but maybe it is actually durian. Without thorns. All this. A lot of people think that all that happened in chapter 3 of Genesis was eating of the fruit, a disobeying of a command, and that's it. But do you know at the core of it, what actually happened in chapter 3 was the beginning of a mistrust between a child and her parent. God created Eve perfect and Adam perfect. Nurtured, cared for them, created and gave them the best gift there was to give them, a garden. And for a person who is from the Middle East, when they read that God has given somebody a garden, it's the best thing anybody in the Middle East can give to their child. Because you remember, in the desert, in the wilderness, that is just nothing. Dryness, no food. The garden provides both water and food. And so it says here that God gave Adam and Eve a garden, but the mistrust, the brokenness of the relationship started at a point where Eden thought that this Father who created me, this God, is holding back from me the best thing. That something is holding back. It's not giving me everything. There's something good that He doesn't want to share with me. There's this guesswork happening. Does God really love me? So when this serpent came and told her otherwise, it built on that doubt. Doubting is not wrong. The Bible doesn't condemn doubt, actually. But then she acted upon that doubt. She's like, I think you're right. I think God is holding back from me. A broken relationship happened. And the consequence, the physical consequence of that was that she saw that she was naked and she was now filled with shame. There was a crack that now appears between the relationship of God and man, and between man and women. humans and humans. There's this crack that starts to happen where we're covering ourselves up and doubting and second guessing one another. It started in chapter 3. The beginning of sin was a broken relationship. Continue to Genesis chapter 3, verse 8 to 10. What worse from that on? It starts to extend. This broken relationship has its consequence. Verse 8 says, "And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man and said to him, 'Where are you?' And he said, 'I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself.'" Nothing's actually changed except the mind. Eating of the fruit didn't suddenly make him naked. Nakedness. No, he was naked all along. He was created naked. He was a baby, right? Created naked. But because of his doubt and second guessing of God and acting upon that doubt, mistrusting God, he suddenly realized his situation. And now, instead of when God calls, "Adam, Adam, where are you?" the normal reaction of Adam was, "God, here I am. I missed you. I haven't seen you in a while. I've been busy at Mars or Jupiter or I don't know where God goes." I said, "Oh, how are you? I've created you. How's the garden? How's the fruit? How's the mangosteen over at the back?" They said, "Oh, it's fresh. It's good." Now, instead of running to God, he's hiding from God. And that's us today, isn't it? We hide from God. We don't like God's presence. We keep his presence to 1 hour per week on Saturday, 11:30 to 12:30. I didn't even say 11 to 12, it's 11:30 to 12:30. We lock God in that time capsule. That's where your presence should dwell. Don't disturb me any other time. I can't take it, God. We hide from God. It's why you're hiding. Where are you, Adam? He says, because we saw that we were naked and we hid from you. We start the problem of broken relationship is not we start to run away from God. We start to be judgmental of ourselves. There's a separation that happens between God and between each other. We talked about the broken barrel last week. That the water can only fill up to wherever the hole starts. And I think in relationship we have that gapping hole in our phase that we have not restored and fixed. That's why the relationship doesn't go further and beyond what it is. That's what the devil tries to tell us. Tell us two things. Tell us that you cannot trust God and you cannot trust each other. That's how we live life. We don't trust God fully. We don't trust each other. It's not that we don't have a reason to. Many a times we have reasons to not trust one another because we've been hurt. Been tricked, been scammed maybe. We've even been hurt by our loved ones that we trust fully at one point in our lives, so we stop trusting them. And when we come to church, we're like, I don't know these people. If those people that love me can hurt me, what more are these strangers that just gather in a place an hour a week? I don't trust them. I don't trust this God that I cannot see. And we start to have shame over ourselves too, because we start to judge people, but when we judge people, we actually judge ourselves. These people can't be trusted. I can't be trusted, actually. I don't trust myself. I'm not good enough of a person. I'm saying we're all the same, but are not good. The judgmentalism comes not just upon others, but actually upon ourselves. In fact, the most judgmental person is actually usually the strictest upon his own life. look at one another, we find faults in one another because we see the faults in our own lives that we cannot overcome. We're ashamed that we're naked. We try to cover ourselves up. Genesis 3, verse 11 to 13. Genesis 3, verse 11 to 13 says, God said, He said, who told you that you were naked? Who told you? Have you eaten of the tree of which I commanded you not to eat? And check out the response, the consequence of this broken relationship. The man said, the woman whom you gave to me to be with me, she gave me the fruit and I ate. What? That you gave me. Check out the words there. I don't trust you, God. You got me in trouble. She got me in trouble. Verse 13. Then the Lord said, God said to the woman, what is it that you have done? The woman said, the serpent deceived me and I ate. Not my fault, God. The serpent. Do you realize what she's actually saying? The serpent that you created, God. You made the heaven and the earth, didn't you? You made the animals that go upon the earth, didn't you? The man is saying, God, the woman you made. The woman says, no, the serpent you made. In the end, they're not blaming each other, they're blaming God. God is your fault. They were like this. God hasn't said anything yet, really. Who told you anything? God hasn't judged them, they were judging themselves and finding somebody to blame. Broken relationships. Consequence of broken relationships with judgmental spirits upon one another and upon ourselves. It's your fault, God. Ultimately, all of us are blaming God. Why do you create me this way? I can't help it, God. It's your fault. Why do you create that person? You're so annoying. God, why is this person like that? Why doesn't he act nice? God, change him. That's how we act. Look at one another. This idea of judgmentalism. And we thought, usually judgmentalism comes from a certain school of thought. Maybe those who we think the more conservative people that more judgmental. I tell you that's a lie. Both camps. If you want to stand in camps, I don't believe in any camps. But if you're saying there's a liberal and a conservative side, the conservative, look at those, they're so liberal, judgmental. Look at them, they're so conservative, judgmental. You know where Jesus stands? It's usually in the middle, where nobody likes him. Oh, he's not conservative enough. Oh, he's not liberal enough. Well, he's Jesus enough. Both sides can be judgmental, no matter what school you belong to, what thought you belong to. Why is he acting that way? What does he think that way? What does he make decision like that? We judge him. When we judge somebody, we think we're better than that person, and we think we can do better. Can we? This torn relationship has to stop. It's affecting families, affecting siblings, affecting friendship, it's affecting friends, very much so affecting church. We have to stop. Stop reflecting what the world is throwing at us and change to become who we were originally designed to be. We can continue being that mud-filled, rusted, undrivable car. That could be your plan. It says, that's how everybody is, that's what I should be, there's no hope for the future, and this is it. Or you can look to the Bible and look at chapter 1, verse 27. It says, I was designed in the image of God, and I can be restored to the image of God. I can go beyond chapter 3 of Genesis to be in existence before relationships were broken, to start mending relationships with one another, with my parents, with my friends, with my siblings, with my church members, and be restored to the original design. How we were meant to be. talk about the relationship breaks down in church. After 12, the relationship starts breaking down. And we function as so because we've been told that's how church should function. One pastor that talks, 120 people that doesn't talk. Nah, man. That's not how it's supposed to be. This relationship model must change. It must stop being this to become something more. The original design must be restored. I'm going to talk about this acronym. I'll tell you more next week in my sermon. Not next week, 2 weeks later. So think about this acronym called CARE. How do we care for one another? It's an acronym, but it's also something that really needs to care about one another. She coined by a friend of mine. CARE means Christ's attitude reflected in everyone. Christ's attitude reflected in everyone. And we're going to look at it and how care can be restored in the Aztec community. But now is a time where we remind ourselves why we gather together and why we can gather together. It's because somebody gave his life for us. Jesus Christ died for all of us on the cross, and that's why we have a reason to gather together. Before he died, he took the disciples to the upper room. He washed their feet. The master washed the feet of the disciples who refused to budge, starting with the proudest and loudest of them all, Peter. And as we go into our foot washing today, let's remind ourselves about the humility that our Lord displayed. Because in restoring relationship, one of the key attributes that we need to encompass is to be humble, which is very, very hard. To say I'm sorry is one of the most difficult things, especially if you were supposed to say I'm sorry 10, 20 years ago. Well, let's start by practicing what our Lord Jesus practiced. Let's switch back to the original slide for Fred. And let's break up into our groups. The back over there is for the couple. For the couples in our church who wants to wash each other's feet and maybe say sorry to each other. Over there on the right side of where I'm pointing that door. Men on the left side. Wash your